This gentleman next to me, Simon Thorpe, he's the president of Brewbound USA. For those of you who don't know Simon, he's now based in Kansas City after Brewbound acquired Boulevard a couple years ago, approaching almost the 2-year anniversary here pretty soon, at the end of this year. And he was up in Cooperstown, New York, running Owen Gang day-to-day, but now you're in Kansas City. What's changed, man? What's the life like here in KC?
Eating a lot of barbecue.
Yeah?
It's the highlight of the last year. It's a lot of work.
It doesn't show. So, I wanted to have Simon here not to talk about barbecue, but to talk a little bit about not only the Boulevard business and the Brewbound business, but just kind of pick his brain, get his perspective on the next, I guess, 5 years of where craft is headed. I think everybody knows the goal that the Brewers Association has sort of set to themselves, or set for the craft industry rather, of 20 share by 2020. So 2020 seems to be the number or the year that is a good benchmark of where things could be headed. But things are changing pretty rapidly. There's a lot of money coming into the space now from both the private equity side as well as Anheuser-Busch's of the world. Lots of fast-growing regional breweries that have started up and in just a few short years become pretty big players in their markets. I think of breweries like Golden Road out in LA or Revolution in Chicago, really kind of going after things pretty hard. And so things are different, and Simon always has a good perspective on where we might be headed. But let's catch up. How's the Boulevard business so far, midway through the year here?
Well, first of all, everyone, welcome to Boulevard. How many craft brewers are there in the audience? Show of hands. Fair few. And wholesalers? Small few. Okay. Well, I think the first thing to say is Kansas City brew scene here is about as good as it gets, and it's testament to the fact that in the audience we've got 14, 15 new breweries in Kansas City just in the last 2 years alone, and that's a big deal. And for me, if I stand back and look at what's interesting and exciting right now about Boulevard, it's just being part of that.
And in terms of growth this year for the Brewbound business overall, what are we looking at? You guys cracked the top 10 as a complete sort of unit. How are things going so far?
Well, just for everyone in the audience, just to give you some perspective on Brewbound Maltgate, because I'm sure a lot of people heard a lot of things. And the company was, it's a Belgian family-owned independent craft brewing company in Europe, and it's 4th generation now. We have in Europe, think of this as a high-end craft brewer in Europe. We've got 5 breweries. 4 of which are in Belgium and 1 is in the Czech Republic, and they're very small. They're beautiful diamond craft breweries. One you will probably all know best is Brewbound. It's the iconic golden ale. And here in the States, we started back in 1987 importing Brewbound and some of our other brands into the US. And shortly after that, it must have been around 2000, we ended up buying started Brewery Omega in Cooperstown, New York. That's a tiny little 50,000 hectare. I'm not letting use hectoliters now. So there's this language barrier thing that goes on all the time.
We use them interchangeably, and I always get so confused.
So I think hectoliters is roughly the same as a barrel. So it's about a 50,000 barrel brewery at the moment. It's a tiny little beautiful farmhouse brewery in upstate New York. Built this wonderful reputation for being right at the top of the quality pyramid. And that's really what our company is all about. And we've always believed that over time, things will go up and down. But if you try to stay right at the top of the pyramid and you do really beautiful things, that will always get you through. And what we wanted to do was to create a family of breweries similar to the one that we had in Europe. So about 18 months ago, John McDonald and I sat down in a room and we started talking about what John wanted to do as he left Brewbound, and it just seemed a perfect fit for us. So right now we have 5 breweries in Europe and 2 here in the US. And if you think about the company, it's still smaller than New Belgium, brand for the whole world. So this is not about a big corporation or anything. It really is a company that believes in craft brewing, and it believes in being right on top of the quality tree, and that's what Boulevard's always been about.
Right. So what's that, I guess, integration process been like over the last 18 months? Obviously there's a number of different dynamics that go into acquiring a brewery and fitting it into your distribution footprint, or vice versa, just getting things aligned, getting cultures aligned, and people, and what's that process been like?
Well, I'm not sure how many people in the room have been through an acquisition or a merger or an integration, but it's never easy. What we did here, putting Boulevard and Ommegang together, is not brain surgery in the sense we're not trying to reinvent General Electric or something, but it always comes with its own interesting set of problems. There are 20 things that you can predict. They go well, they're exactly the way you describe them. There are always 2 things that you think are going to go brilliantly and they just don't, and 2 things that you think are going to go badly. And they end up going nowhere near what you said. So there's always a series of surprises, but the way I've always described it, and having done a few of these in prior lives, it's kind of like the first 6 months you kind of find out who people are and where the toilets are and all that kind of stuff. You spend the first 6 months really just trying to figure things out and get to know people a little bit. And there's always some surprises, because no matter how much due diligence you do in these things, there's always a few from, oh, really, I didn't know we bought that. Crikey, that's a bit strange. The second 6 months are really then about trying to sort out your priorities. And it's about trying to get focus and get the wheels moving and get some idea of, right, this is what we want to be doing that is going to make or break the business over the next 5, 10, 15, and we think 20 years out. So you try and set up a set of priorities that are really simple, clear, they're executable, but you know that they're going to be the engines and the drivers of the business. And the third 6 months is when stuff really starts to happen. And then you get this beautiful thing where there's momentum in the business and projects are starting to come into the market. And that's the golden time, and we're right there right now.
There's actually something tangible that you can sort of point to and say, this is the result of, this is what we've been working towards. And one of those things is Ommegang's new IPA that you guys produced it here, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of discussion. It's a great point, Chris, in the sense there's a lot of discussion at the moment. I'm sure all of us in the room have kind of thought about it a little bit. But it's kind of like, can you be a craft brewer with provenance? I'm based in Kansas City, or I'm in Lincoln, Nebraska, or I'm in San Diego. And how important is that provenance to who you are, what your DNA is? And as craft brewers grow up, you have to go through this kind of process of trying to figure out how you move beer to different parts of the country, because there's demand for it. And so at that point, you have to kind of cross over this big hurdle that says, well, I'm going to produce brewed beer in a place where I didn't come from originally. You see a number of different breweries doing it different ways, and I think there's no right or wrong answer to this. There are some breweries that are really trucking beer across the country. And those of you who are sort of figureheads will know that it's about a $25, $35 per barrel cost to get a keg of beer from one side of the country to another. There are other breweries which are building greenfield breweries on the East Coast, they're West Coast breweries. It makes logical sense for them to be building on the East Coast so that they avoid all those freight costs. There are other breweries that are partnering. And I think we're going to see some really interesting cooperative ideas coming forward in craft over the next 2 to 3 years, with people partnering up with like-minded brothers and sisters to solve this capacity question across the country. For us, at the moment, we've been very carefully looking at the West Coast and how we develop Ommegang, for example, on the West Coast. And it makes logical sense for us to cut the freight costs and produce it here in Kansas Kansas City and to ship it on to the West Coast. It's pure economics. Part of the quid pro quo of this then is, at a certain point in time, we want to be supplying the Northeast from Cooperstown. So again, that's a pure economic thing. The really critical thing in the middle of it is, are you working with a brewery that can do things at the quality level that you really want? And I'd urge anyone who kind of gets into this discussion to think about, it's much less about the numbers on a spreadsheet that make some financial sense. It really is about having confidence in the quality of the brewery that you're working with. And as we look at this, we wouldn't have bought Brewbound if we didn't have absolute confidence and faith in the beers that they produce, and the way that they do it, and the quality of the brewery, the infrastructure here in Kansas City. So net, long way around to your question. We've just started producing some of the on-brand beers here in Kansas City. That will develop. We'll see how things go. We're in the process of looking at what we need to do at Cooperstown to be able to produce some of the Brewbound beers from the Northeast up there. But I think one of the things, again, as you look at the crystal ball and start to think about what shapes craft brewing over the next 2 to 3 years, I'd urge everyone in the room to look at your cost side economics, because it's going to be defined by some of these really dull things like freight costs. And whereas we want to just go and make some great beers and there's some really cool stuff out there, it's going to be some really prosaic stuff about how do you figure out your logistics and your supply chain to move beer. We've heard there's some different business models as to how breweries are being successful. And that's a really critical shaper of what's going to define who wins and loses over the next 5 to 10 years.
But just speaking about it from a production side, I mean, there's obviously certain beers that do better at the Boulevard facility versus the Omegang facility. I mean, some breweries are better set up to do IPAs versus, lagers or, whatever the way that the brewery was designed from the outset. How is that? Is that a difficult process to work through as you're deciding, well, it makes more financial sense for us to brew some of these beers in New York, but maybe the brewery isn't really set up for it?
Yeah, I mean, it's expensive, frankly. And when you're trying to match flavors, when you're trying to match a process and that the brewery has developed over a number of years, it takes a lot of effort and energy and thoughtfulness to be able to adapt. So I'm going to give you an example. Omegang, as a brewery, is pretty small. It has relatively low capabilities in terms of dry hopping. So we've just been started to invest in some really good dry hopping capability. The inverse of that is Brewbound is really good at that. And so instead of having to kind of discover how to do dry hopping in a really good way, you can just tap into the expertise. And there's a few things in terms of developments, for example, of saisons. We love saisons. Omegang is really, really good. So we've transplanted a lot of learning. So again, one of the benefits, and as you think about who you're partnering with, it's as much about expertise and finding the right people who know how to do stuff as it is about finding a brewery that is compatible with the way that you want to brew your beer.
It seems like you're pretty set on this idea that partnerships are going to be what sort of make or break some businesses. Maybe the small local guy that's just staying local doesn't need the help of a strong partner to accomplish what he wants to accomplish. But those that are setting out with these goals to grow and expand, maybe that's where it makes a little bit more sense. How important is it going to be for breweries to consider this, going forward? Do I need to have a partner, whether it's a financial partner or just somebody to share these secrets with, or these learnings? Do you see that being like the biggest piece of how things develop over the next couple of years?
Yes is the simple answer to the question. if you think about what has made us strong as a craft movement, and this isn't an industry, it's not a business, it's a movement, and you'll feel it in the room. One of the things that makes us strong is working together. And we can all articulate that in different ways, but if we think that we can take on big beer, if we think that we can be a 20 share, if we think that we can be sustainable over the next 50 years on our own, in isolation, I personally, I think we're smoking something really exotic. The cornerstone, the foundation of why craft beer is so successful right now, and is going to continue to be successful, is because we work together. We sit in a room like this and we talk about the intimate details of what we're doing together, and it is not like making soap opera where you've got competition breathing down your ears all the time. It's a beautiful thing, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of us love being in this business, in this movement. There we go, I've shot myself already. But it is a key thing, and I think if we continue to talk to each other, that's a good thing. If we want to be successful, we have to reach out and find partnerships, and it doesn't matter whether it's distribution, logistics, whether it's expertise on how to do something. If all ships float on a rising tide, and if we hold hands, we will float high. And from that point of view, again, I think it's not only critical to the practicalities of being in craft beer, it's just structural. It's in our DNA to be working with each other. It's a different world.
But it won't be easy, just sitting down and saying we should be working together because it makes sense. Everybody's got, their own goals, their own objectives, different motivations, competing interests. It's difficult to come to terms on some of these things, obviously. So I think that things will get competitive at some point. How do you balance those two? I guess how do you balance that? The fact that it's naturally going to be competitive as a business environment, as a business climate, and the fact that partnerships are what is going to propel things to a 20 share and beyond.
Our competition is not ourselves in the room. I mean, I'm not saying anything that I'm sure a number of you haven't already thought before, but our competition is wine. Our competition is spirits. Our competition are very, very big breweries down the road in other places in Missouri. All we need to do is just keep gradually adding little bits, and there's more than enough of this pie for everyone to be very successful. And I think it depends on what your personal objectives are in life as well. I think as craft brewers, we can be really happy, really comfortable in Lincoln, Nebraska, with a brewery that sells in Lincoln, Nebraska. It's a fine town, it's got a great beer community. And if you become the brewery of Lincoln, Nebraska, you can lead a great life, and you can build something that's really interesting and worthwhile with your life on the planet. If you want to be Anheuser-Busch, then you've got to think differently. But I think it just depends on the scale of ambition. And right now, the one thing that I think we should all be focused on, it's not attacking each other or trying to take a share of craft. It's craft share of total beer, craft beer share of total alcohol. That's where the future of rock and roll lies for us. It's not in slicing and dicing a small pie between us.
But there's a lot of people who would say that the fact that so many people are coming into the space and there's all these new brands, that it is very much craft on craft right now, at least in some markets. They're trading craft handles on premise, and it's much less taking from the big guys and it's taking from another craft brewer. So it has gotten competitive in many markets, maybe not so much in Kansas City, but certainly in some of the markets we visit, we see a lot of that. We see a lot of competition amongst craft brewers, and it's tough out there. So
I think it's tough if you think about if your horizon is a series of on-premise bars, craft bars in a certain city. Yeah, everyone's competing for the same 12 tap handles in a bar. And that kind of bar is not where you're going to make your brand, your reputation for the very long term. That's a place where you're going to get trial. As we look at the shifting dynamics in craft right now, next 3 years are going to be all about off-premise, and it's going to be all about rotation. We can go out and get distribution tomorrow morning. We've got some really great wholesaler partners who can execute the hell out of things, and they can get us distribution. But it's about sustainable rate of sale. And that sustainable rate of sale comes with being narrow and deep and making sure that the programming is right and that the things are turning for us. And I think the temptation is to try and be too broad, too shallow. Those are the breweries that won't make it. Their rate of sale will not pick up. And I'm personally convinced that the next 2 to 3 shelf resets in off-premise will be defining for us all as a craft movement. If the rotations are not there in Highland or in Wegmans in the northeast or in Safeway on the west coast, the decisions are going to be fairly short, sharp and clear. And that will force a lot of the people who are not doing a good job in that distribution out of the pocket. And the people who are doing a good job, focusing on being narrow and deep and getting the sustainable rotations will be the ones who sort it out. But I'm personally convinced next 3 shelf resets and off-premise are going to be defining.
So it almost seems like there's, kind of 2 contradictory statements here. I mean, you're saying it's not...
There's a first for me, Chris.
You're saying it's not craft on craft, but these retailers are going to be making tough decisions. And if Boulevard is executing better than another local craft brewer, and you take over that spot because you're getting faster turns, your brand is pulling more frequently, that is very much craft on craft, right? Even if it's not you setting out to accomplish that, the retailer is sort of making the choice that this is better for my business. So they're almost forcing it in a way, it sounds like.
I think that, I take your point. The point is, you've got to be really good at executing. It's not enough just to make fantastic beer. You've got to be able to set programming and follow through and make it a sustainable rate of sale. And I think, again, as we think about capabilities of breweries, we tend, in this room, we tend to focus on the types of beers that we're making and are the beers good. That's price of entry. Unless you're making fantastic beer, you might as well pack up and go home. Today, the people who will ultimately be successful over the next 20 years are those who can not only do that, but can execute great programming and support the brands with their wholesalers. And they have a great relationship that is constructed with their wholesalers. Their wholesalers are making money from them. So it's not enough for us just to be able to make great beer. That's the price of entry.
Well, and I feel like the pressures are being compounded by the fact that there is so much interest in the category from the financial types, from new category entrants. So, a number of deals being done over the last few months, private equity getting more involved, a lot of money flowing into the space. How do you see that altering the landscape? They have goals too. They have things that they need to get done over the next 5 to 7 years when they go buy a brewery. So how's that going to change the landscape?
I think it's a good thing, and I'll explain why. How will it change the landscape? I think it will simply enable breweries at a certain level to make a next step jump. And the reason I think it's a good thing is, as we're building craft breweries, it's actually real easy, and I know it may not feel like it, but it's real easy. The pain really only starts when you get to about 50,000 barrels. Because at that point, the money becomes serious. Okay, you may have mortgaged your house, got all your friends to contribute to what you're building, but the reality is when you get up to a brewery that's producing about 50,000 barrels, yeah, you've got to put your big girl pants on and go down to the bank and get some more money. Some of the money that's coming into the market, into craft brewing at the moment, is enabling breweries to make that step jump. People can't necessarily afford to do it from their own cash flow, and they can't necessarily raise that kind of money. So you bring in a partner who will finance you to go from 50,000 up to 100,000 barrels. 100,000 barrels, you get a 250, 250, you get a 500. So there are some step jumps, and again, if you stand back and do lots of endless analysis of the math of the economics of how breweries are growing right now, it's these step jumps that are really critical, and that's where external financing coming into craft brewing can really help to take people up to the next level.
And so all that capacity is being built out. Bart showed a stat. Bart Watson from the Brewers Association, their economist, he showed a slide at the Craft Brewers Conference a few weeks back. It compared production to capacity, and it was 22 million barrels of craft beer production and 34.6 million barrels of capacity. So utilizing about 60, a little over 60% of the available capacity right now, if you just take it all in and look at it sort of from a macro perspective. I thought the ideal utilization rate was like 80 to 90, right? I don't want to brewery, but that's what people tell me. And I don't know. I wonder sometimes if brewers are getting a little bit exuberant. Are they building out too much capacity too quickly?
Capacity in the US is an interesting thing because, to your point, there's this notion that everyone's building a lot of capacity. There's a few breweries that are building really big slugs of capacity. They're very high profile. They're in the news a lot. There's a real shortage of certain types of capacity right now. If you want capacity on the West Coast, good luck. Because right now, if you want to go find capacity on the West Coast to expand, if you want to partner with someone, good luck. It's just not there. There's more capacity on the East Coast. If you want to expand in packaging formats, you want to go into cans, good luck, guys. It took us the best part of 2 years to be able to find someone who we really thought was cool, who had the right brewing capacity, who had the right canning capacity for us to launch Brewbound cans. It really depends on what type of capacity you're looking for. If you want pure IPA capacity on the East Coast, right now you can find it. There are some people who will contract for you, and people are building it out. Are they getting ahead of themselves? There's some really tough economics in the middle of this. If you're growing your brewery at 40% a year on year for the last 3 years, and you're out of capacity, what do you build? The reality is that you've got to build at 3 times as much capacity as you currently have if you're growing 40% a year like that. Big gamble, big bet. Because 40% as a growth rate, that's a ballsy move if you think you're going to do that for the next 3 years year after year. You've got to have some confidence. So I think there are some people who are betting the farm that 40% growth rate will continue. It's actually much easier to grow your brewery if you're in about 20% growth rate. You can see it, you can manage it, it's much more easy to manage the cash flow in the business, and you're just on the edge of being able to cope with it. If you're growing at 40%, it's tough to actually keep pace with the ability to do that, and the risk profile on how you build that out is quite scary. So I think there are some people who are going to find themselves hitting a wall and they're going to say, "Ooh, we built a bit too much." The good news is, I think there's still going to be enough people hunting for capacity for anyone in that position to be able to contract produce if they need to fill up a brewery.
Right. So I think about that capacity, and if we get to that point, if growth slows, yeah, sure, a brewery's growing at 40% year over year. The category itself is growing at 18, 19% each year.